I remember the morning like it was yesterday. My small apartment smelled of instant coffee and old books. I was fumbling with my tie, rehearsing my vows in front of a cracked mirror. It felt unreal. A poor student marrying a 71-year-old billionaire. I shook my head. What am I doing? I whispered to myself. My reflection gave no answer. The car arrived. A sleek black limousine, more luxurious than anything I had ever touched. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a spectacle. Her house. I had never been inside. Marble floors, golden chandeliers, art worth more than my tuition. And there she was, radiant, waiting at the top of the staircase. I froze. "Good morning, my love," she said softly. Her voice wrapped around me like a warm blanket. "Ready," I nodded, though my hands were shaking. I could feel the weight of the world outside her doors. As we stepped into the ballroom, eyes turned. Some curious, some amused, most judgmental, and Clara, perched in her diamond-studded seat, smirked at me. "You look nervous and poor." "Perfect combination," she said loudly. Her niece whispered just loud enough for me to hear. "He's only here for the money. Look at him, can't even hold his posture." The words stung. I wanted to vanish, but then I felt her hand squeeze mine. A small gesture, simple, yet enough to steady me. The ceremony began. Vows, music, applause. And still, the judgment lingered. Every whisper a weight, every glance a sharp knife. The moment we exchanged rings, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Love, fear, shame, pride. I couldn't separate them. All I knew was that she looked at me with trust, and that alone made the chaos outside irrelevant. During the reception, the whispers grew louder. Her family didn't hide their contempt. "Do you even know how to manage her wealth?" Her cousin sneered. "She's 71. And you?" Another laughed. "Good luck, young man." "You'll need it," said her brother. I smiled weakly, nodded, and tried to laugh along, but inside, my heart pounded. Later that night, after the guests left, we sat together in the quiet library. "I can't believe this is real," I admitted. "It is," she said, brushing a strand of hair from my forehead. "And it's beautiful because it's real between us. Forget the rest." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me from the judgmental chaos outside into a world where only we existed. But little did I know, the real challenge was about to begin. The scrutiny, the whispers, the doubts, and worse, the secrets she had kept. Even from me. The morning after the wedding, I woke up in a room that felt more like a palace than a home. Velvet curtains, silk sheets, a view of gardens I had only seen in magazines. I rubbed my eyes and whispered, "How did I even get here?" Breakfast was tense. Her family had insisted on joining. Aunt Clara's eyes pierced me from across the table. Her lips curved into that ever-present smirk. Her son Mark barely concealed a sneer. And her niece Sophie kept whispering to the servants, probably hoping I'd overhear. "Do you even know what you're eating?" Clara asked, pointing at my plate of smoked salmon. "Yes," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thank you." Mark leaned forward. "You really love her, right?" "I do," I said, and my voice faltered slightly. "Or you love the bank accounts," he said sharply. I felt my face burn. I wanted to tell them, scream even, that this wasn't about money, that I genuinely cared for her. But the words stuck in my throat. How could they understand what they refused to see? Later that day, we took a walk through the gardens. The sunlight sparkled on the fountain, and the scent of roses was intoxicating. For a brief moment, the world outside seemed distant, irrelevant. "I don't know how you do it," I said. "How you deal with all the judgment, all the whispers." She smiled softly. "I've lived long enough to know that people will always talk, always judge. Let them. You and I, we know the truth." Her words should have comforted me. They did in a way, but the tension lingered. Every time we returned indoors, there were more whispers, more stares, more silent accusations. The second day was even worse. A luncheon with her extended family turned into a minefield. "You do know she's nearly 72? Aunt Clara asked, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "And you? Barely out of college. Do you think this is appropriate?" "I love her," I said, trying to sound confident. "Love or convenience?" her cousin chimed in. "Come on, look at him. He's smiling, but I bet he's calculating." I forced a laugh, but it felt hollow. I started questioning myself. Did I belong here? Did I even deserve her? Yet in private, she continued to show me the warmth that no one else could see. At night, she'd hold me close, whispering, "Don't doubt yourself. I chose you, not my fortune, not my reputation, you." Her trust made it harder to bear the family's contempt. I loved her, yes, But loving her openly in a world that constantly doubted me was exhausting. Every compliment from her was tainted by the fear of judgment. Every touch, every word of affection carried a weight heavier than I had ever imagined. By the fourth day, the whispers became more invasive. Her friends, those I hadn't even met before, were curious and cruel. "Did you hear? He's only here for her money. Pathetic," one said behind my back. I wanted to confront them, defend myself, but I didn't. What could I say that would change their minds? That evening, she surprised me with a quiet dinner in the library. No servants, no family, just the two of us. Candlelight flickered across her face. "You're exhausted," she said. "I am," I admitted. "And every day it gets harder." "Then let's escape, just for tonight. Forget them," she said. We talked about everything. My childhood, her travels, her favorite books. Laughter returned, light and unburdened. In that moment, I almost forgot the judgment, the stares, the constant pressure. I almost believed that love alone could shield us, but I knew better. The storm outside was far from over, and deep down, I sensed that the biggest surprises were yet to come. Secrets she had kept, truths I hadn't uncovered, a revelation that could change everything. 7 days. Now that's all it would take. By the 5th day, I had started to feel torn. My heart ached in ways I hadn't expected. Everyone still judged me. Her family, her friends, strangers even seemed to notice the age difference and smirk. But when I was alone with her, all of that melted away. One morning, she poured coffee for both of us. I watched her carefully, memorizing the way sunlight danced in her hair, the soft smile that never reached the judgmental world outside. "You've been quiet," she said, noticing my stare. "I'm just thinking," I muttered, trying to hide the way my heart raced. "Thinking about them?" she asked softly. "Yes," I admitted, "about everyone who doesn't believe me, about us." She reached for my hand, warm, firm, reassuring. "Then think about this instead," she whispered. "The truth is only ours, not theirs." That simple gesture made my chest ache with longing. Love, real love, was confusing. How could I feel so deeply for someone everyone else considered off limits or absurd? Later that day, we walked through her private gardens. The roses were in full bloom, a riot of red, pink, and white. I tried to focus on them, but my attention kept drifting to her. The way her eyes sparkled in the sunlight, the elegance in her every movement. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you," I confessed, breaking the silence. "Someone who sees me. For me." "You do the same for me," she replied, squeezing my hand. "You see past age, past expectations. That's rare." Her words were intoxicating. Every doubt, every harsh comment from her relatives faded when I looked into her eyes. Yet the world outside still loomed. Her niece Sophie cornered me in the library later that evening. "You're just a kid," she said coldly. "Do you really think she could love someone your age?" "I do," I said, trying to keep calm. "Or maybe you just want her money," she sneered. I left without another word. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. Could anyone understand how I truly felt? Could anyone see the truth of what we shared? That night, lying beside her, I whispered, "Sometimes I feel like the world is against us." "Then let it be," she said softly. "We have our truth, and that's stronger than any judgment." Her confidence was contagious. I began to believe her, even as doubts lingered in the corners of my mind. Could love really survive all of this scrutiny? Could I really trust that what I felt was reciprocated, not just tolerated? The next morning, she surprised me again. She had set up a small art corner in the library. Paints, brushes, canvases. "For you," she said, "to express yourself." I was touched. Nobody had ever offered me anything so personal. "Why?" I asked. "Because I see you. Not just the world's idea of you, but the real you," she said. In that moment, all my confusion crystallized into a single realization. I loved her, truly, deeply, in a way that defied judgment, mockery, and social expectation. And I realized something else. I had 7 days left before the revelation she had promised. A secret she had hinted at, but never revealed. I didn't know what it would be, but I knew it would change everything. 7 days, and I was ready for whatever came next. By the 6th day, the weight of judgment was suffocating. Everywhere we went, eyes followed me, mouths whispered subtle Smirks appeared. Breakfast was worse than ever. Her brother, seated opposite me, tapped his fork against the plate in rhythm, a silent accusation. Aunt Clara leaned back, her lips curved in that calculating smile, and her niece Sophie kept glancing at me as if she could see my very thoughts. You do know how to handle her wealth, don't you? Clara asked casually, but everyone heard. The morning after the revelation, the house felt different. There was a quiet tension, like the calm after a storm, but heavier. Expectation hung in the air. I knew the family would confront the truth sooner or later. We gathered in the dining room for brunch. Every eye was on me, every movement scrutinized. Aunt Clara's smirk was gone, replaced by something unreadable. Surprise, disbelief, perhaps even shame. Sophie's whispered comments died on her lips. Her brother stared, silent, as if trying to process everything. I took a deep breath and held her hand. The warmth of her touch steadied me. I know what you all think, I began, voice strong and unwavering. That I married her for money, that I don't belong here, that I'm a fortune hunter. Aunt Clara opened her mouth, but I continued before she could speak. You're wrong. I love her, and she trusts me completely, without doubt, without hesitation. Not for her wealth, not for convenience. For me. I felt her squeeze my hand under the table. Her eyes met mine, full of pride and confidence. I realized then how much she had prepared me for this moment, not just for her secret to be revealed, but for the world to see us as we truly were. She stood beside me, radiating calm authority. And now, she said, voice firm yet gentle, the truth is out. He is the one I trust, and he is the one I chose. The room went silent. Shock rippled across their faces. Clara's smirk faltered. Sophie's lips parted, words dying in her throat. Her brother finally looked at me, and for the first time, there was respect in his eyes. You set this up? Her brother asked quietly. Yes, she replied, years ago. I wanted to ensure that whoever shared my life was someone I could trust. Someone who sees me as I am, not as what people think I should be. The shock was palpable. Family members exchanged glances, struggling to hide their embarrassment and disbelief. The whispers that had haunted me for days were gone. Every doubt, every accusation evaporated in the face of undeniable truth. I looked around the room, feeling a surge of emotion. For the first time in my life, I was truly seen, not as a young man marrying an elderly millionaire, not as a target of ridicule, but as a human being worthy of love. Later, as we left the room, Clara muttered barely audibly, I didn't expect that. Sophie didn't speak at all, and her brother gave me a small nod, a silent acknowledgement. Outside, in the sunlight, I exhaled deeply. I turned to her, unable to stop smiling. I can't believe this, I said. You did, she whispered, her eyes sparkling. And now everyone else will too. But that's not what matters. What matters is us. I realized then that judgment, whispers, and assumptions were powerless when love was true and unwavering. The world could question, doubt, and judge, but we had each other, and that was stronger than anything else. That day, I learned a lesson I would never forget. Love isn't about age, money, or appearances. It's about trust, connection, and courage. And when love is genuine, nothing else matters. The days after the revelation were surreal. The house, once filled with judgment and whispers, now had a different energy. There was still tension, yes, but it felt more like curiosity than contempt. Her family slowly adjusted to the truth. Aunt Clara no longer smirked at me. Instead, she studied me with cautious respect. Sophie avoided mocking me, and even her brother spoke with measured politeness. The change was subtle but unmistakable. I realized that our love had not only survived the scrutiny, but had forced those who doubted us to face the reality they refused to see. It was liberating and humbling all at once. One evening, we sat on the terrace, the city lights sparkling below. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I felt a peace I hadn't known before. I never thought it would be like this, I admitted. What do you mean? She asked softly. All the judgment, the whispers, the constant doubt. I thought it would break me, but it didn't, and neither did we. She smiled, brushing a hand across my cheek. True love doesn't break. It grows stronger under pressure. And you proved yourself every day, not just to me, but to yourself. Her words sank deep. I realized how much I had grown in just a week, how fear and uncertainty had been replaced by trust and confidence. A few days later, we attended a small family gathering. The atmosphere was still cautious, but warmer. Conversations flowed, awkward at first, then easier. Her family began to see me not as an outsider, not as a fortune hunter, but as a man who loved her genuinely and who had earned her trust. At one point, Aunt Clara whispered, almost apologetically, "I misjudged you." I smiled gently. Thank you. That means more than you know. Later, as we walked through the gardens alone, I felt a surge of gratitude. The judgmental eyes, the harsh words, the doubt, they all seemed distant now. What mattered was her, our bond, and the trust that had carried us through the storm. I was scared, I admitted quietly, looking into her eyes. "So was I," she replied, holding my hands. "But now we know what's real. That's what matters." I thought about the lesson I had learned. Love cannot be measured by age, wealth, or social expectation. True love is built on trust, understanding, and courage. For the first time, I felt free, not just from her family's scrutiny, but from my own insecurities. I knew that as long as we had each other, the world's judgment could never touch us. That night, as I held her close, I whispered, "Thank you for trusting me, for believing in us." She smiled softly. "And thank you for seeing me, really seeing me. That's all I ever wanted." I realized then that love is not about appearances or opinions. It's about connection, courage, and unwavering trust. And in that realization, I found not only her, but a deeper understanding of myself. We walked hand in hand into the night, ready for whatever the world might think or say, but confident that nothing could break the bond we had forged. And in that moment, I knew love, true love, is worth every challenge, every doubt, and every whispered accusation. The following days felt like stepping into a new world. The whispers and sneers had mostly faded, replaced by curiosity and slowly respect. Every glance from her family still carried questions, but now they were tempered with acknowledgement. Mornings became peaceful. We cooked breakfast together. In her vast kitchen, laughter echoing where tension once lived. I watched her move effortlessly, pouring tea, slicing fruit, and I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the money or the grandeur surrounding us. "You're getting better at this," she teased one morning as I burned the toast. "I'm learning from the best," I said, grinning. Even her family began to notice. Clara, surprisingly, complimented me on my choice of table settings. Sophie nodded at me across the table, a small but genuine smile. Her brother even asked my opinion on her garden layout, something he had never done before. In the afternoons, we explored the gardens. The roses were still in full bloom, their fragrance mingling with the soft warmth of the sun. She taught me how to care for rare flowers, and I laughed at my own mistakes. "You have to be gentle," she said, brushing soil from my hands. "Not everything can be rushed, not even life." I realized she was teaching me more than gardening. She was teaching patience, understanding, and the subtle art of living fully in the moment. One evening, as we sat on the terrace watching the sunset, she turned to me and said, "You've changed my life, you know." I shook my head. "No, you've changed mine. You showed me a world I never imagined, a love I never thought I deserved." Her hand found mine again, and I felt the same warmth, the same reassurance that had guided me through the storm of judgment. Began creating our routines, small joys that mattered more than the opinions of others. Coffee in the morning, walks through the city at night, quiet evenings reading together. It was ordinary, yet extraordinary, because it was ours. Her family slowly but surely adjusted. No longer were they sharp with words or judgmental in their glances. They started including me, asking questions, even laughing at my awkward attempts to fit into their world. The walls of doubt and suspicion had cracked, just enough for trust and understanding to seep in. One night, I whispered to her, as we watched the city lights, "Do you think they'll ever fully understand?" "They may not," she replied softly, "but it doesn't matter. What matters is that we understand each other." And in that moment, I realized something profound. Love isn't about convincing the world. It's about knowing, without question, that what you have is real. It's about building a life together, day by day, hand in hand, no matter what anyone else thinks. The judgment of strangers, the whispers of family, the assumptions, they all lost their power in the face of trust, affection, and the life we were creating together. For the first time, I felt truly free, not just from scrutiny, but from fear. The world could talk, judge, and speculate, but it could not touch the love we shared. And as I held her close that night, I knew this was the beginning of our life together, built on truth, courage, and a love that no one could question. By the 9th day, the house felt lighter, almost unrecognizable from the tense, judgment-filled space it had been. The revelation of her trust in me had shifted everything. The eyes that once pierced with skepticism now lingered with curiosity. Some even softened with respect. Her family slowly began to engage with me in ways I had never imagined. Aunt Clara, once sharp and biting, offered advice about household matters. "You actually handle the schedule well," she admitted, a small smile breaking through her usual smirk. "Thank you," I said, surprised at her sincerity. Sophie, who had been the cruelest, approached me one afternoon in the garden. I was wrong," she said quietly. "About everything." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and pride. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. I know. It wasn't easy to accept. Even her brother, who had been cold and judgmental, started to engage in conversations with me. Not just polite words, but genuine questions about my studies, my interests, even my ideas about future projects together. These small victories, our own life continued to blossom. We discovered routines that were uniquely ours. Morning coffee rituals, long walks through the city, quiet evenings of shared stories and laughter. The grandeur of her home no longer felt intimidating. It felt lived in, warm, and ours. One afternoon, she called me to the terrace. Sunlight danced across her silver hair, and her eyes sparkled with warmth. "You know," she said, "they'll always talk, but look how far we've come in just 9 days." I smiled, feeling the weight of the past week lift completely. We've created something stronger than their judgment. It wasn't just about the wealth, the age difference, or social expectations anymore. It was about trust, love, and mutual respect, the kind that could withstand anything. Later, during a family dinner, a moment I had dreaded for days, I realized something extraordinary. The room was filled with light conversation, laughter even. Clara chuckled at a joke I made. Sophie nodded at something I said, smiling genuinely. Her brother raised his glass in a quiet gesture of acknowledgement. The whispers, the judgment, the sneers, they were gone, replaced by cautious acceptance. Yes, but also by recognition. Recognition that the love between us was real, unwavering, and undeniable. That night, as we stood on the terrace watching the city lights twinkle below, I felt a deep sense of peace. I turned to her, holding her hands tightly. "We made it," I said softly. "Yes," she replied, leaning her head on my shoulder. "We did, and we'll continue to, together." In that moment, I realized that love is not about convincing anyone else. It's about knowing the truth between you and the one you love, and building a life together that reflects that truth. No one could judge what we had, and no one could touch the bond that had survived whispers, sneers, and doubt. We were free, not just from the world's scrutiny, but from the fear that had haunted me for days. And in that freedom, I found clarity. Love, real love, transcends age, wealth, and societal expectation. It thrives on trust, courage, and the quiet moments shared. When no one is watching, for the first time, I felt completely, utterly at peace. The 10th day dawned calm, almost surreal. The chaos, judgment, and whispers of the past week had finally faded. In their place was quiet understanding, gentle acknowledgement, and a peace I had never known. I woke up and watched her sleep for a moment. The sunlight kissed her silver hair, and I marveled at how profoundly I loved her. It wasn't about wealth, age, or appearances. It was about connection, trust, and genuine understanding. We had breakfast together, laughing over small mishaps in the kitchen. Even Aunt Clara peeked in to compliment the meal. Sophie waved from across the hall, a small but sincere gesture. Her brother nodded as I walked by. It felt like the world had finally shifted. Later, we took a walk in the gardens. The roses bloomed, as brightly as the first day, but everything felt different. The judgments, the whispers, they no longer had power. What mattered was our truth. I stopped and took her hands in mine. "You know," I said, "these past 10 days, they've taught me something I'll never forget." "And what's that?" she asked, smiling softly. "That love isn't measured by age, wealth, or what anyone else thinks. It's about trust, courage, and connection. It's about seeing the other person, truly seeing them, and being seen in return." She squeezed my hands, her eyes reflecting the same clarity and warmth I felt. Exactly, she whispered. And now we live it every day, free from judgment, free from fear, free to love completely. I looked around the gardens, at the home that had once felt like a gilded cage, and realized it had become our sanctuary. Every room, every corner held memories of laughter, whispers of secrets revealed, and moments of love shared in quiet intimacy. That evening, as we sat together on the terrace, I reflected on everything: the laughter, the ridicule, the doubt, the small victories, the revelation, and the acceptance. It all led to this: a love that was stronger than any obstacle, deeper than any societal expectation, and more real than anything I had ever known. I never imagined life could be like this, I said quietly. Neither did I, she replied, resting her head on my shoulder. But now we know, and that's what matters. I realized then that judgment and whispers would always exist somewhere. People would always make assumptions, cast doubts, and question choices they didn't understand. But love, real, unwavering love, was beyond all of that. It didn't need approval. It didn't need validation. It didn't need explanation. It just needed trust, courage, and hearts willing to see each other clearly. And in that realization, I finally understood the greatest lesson of all. Love isn't about appearances. It's about truth. It's about being brave enough to embrace it no matter what the world thinks. I held her close, feeling the steady rhythm of her heart, and whispered, "Thank you for loving me, for trusting me, for showing me what love truly is." "And thank you," she said softly, "for seeing me, truly seeing me beyond everything else." And in that moment I knew nothing else mattered. We had found something eternal, something unshakable, something real. Love in its purest form had won.